Hey everyone, welcome back to Body Haven Soaps. My name is Darlene. I am the owner and creator of Body Haven Soaps, and the whole goal of this channel is to encourage or help other creators create. So today's video is going to be all about doing the herbal infusions. I get a lot of questions on infusing herbs and that into oils, butters. I did a previous video last year on infusing herbs into butters. I do have a few more things to bring to that will come later on this year, but for today we're going to go over infusing herbs into oils. It's pretty straightforward. I'm going to give you a few little tips and tricks along the way of how I get it, how I find I get the best quality of a herbal infusion. I am not a herbologist. I am not a chemist. So disclosure there, you guys, this is just stuff that I've learned through my research, by trial and error, by talking to herbologists and people in the field of the properties of certain herbs and how to bring things into my products. There's many people out there that are a fountain of information. So if you know herbologists or anything like that, they love to explain their craft to you. They have a passion for it. So ask questions, okay? That's just my biggest tip there. So today's infusion, we're actually going to make the herbal infusion I need to make my pain relief bar or stick. I put it in a tube. So that's what we're going to work on today. So there isn't a whole lot of herbs in here. There's specific herbs that I use in here, along with an essential oil blend for that recipe, which is a video that will come after this one. But for today, we're going to infuse these herbs into oil. So the herbs that we're going to use today, we are going to use the arnica flower. Arnica is very well known, and I'm not making any medical claims here because I am not licensed to do so. So quick disclaimer there. However, through my information, my research, and talking to people that are very involved in this and licensed in this, arnica flower is a very good healing herb. It has been known to help with inflammation, pain relief, sore muscles, commonly used on sprains and strains and things like that. So that is why we are using the arnica flower. We are also going to use some comfrey leaves. Comfrey is also one of the herbs that is recognized or known for relieving pain, okay, in joints and muscles. It has amazing healing properties. That is why we're going to use this one. And the other herb that we're going to use is going to be lavender flowers. Lavender flower has, herb actually has a really, everybody knows it as the relaxation. So if we think about it, the scent relaxes us. The actual oil that comes from this, or the properties that come from the flower, actually can help relieve muscle tension, or is known to help relieve muscle tension, is how I should word that. So it is known to help with sore muscles and relax muscles because it does have that relaxing property. So that is why we're using the lavender in there. And those are the three oils that we are going, or three herbs that we are going to infuse. Now I've gone ahead and I have got this all set up. Actually, I usually do a really big batch of this because I actually make a lot of this lotion stick. But I broke it down and made my recipe a little bit smaller, and I've got all the steps set out so that we can get through this video, because it is actually a long process to infuse oils properly. This isn't something that you rush. All right, so I have all the steps set out. So the very first thing that we're going to do is, and you don't need a lot of equipment to be able to do this. You need something to be able to blend your herbs up. So I have my little blender here. And you guys, I think I got this at Walmart for 30 some bucks or 40 bucks, whatever it was. It's not super expensive, but it has blades. It breaks up the dry stuff for me. And I find that it works very well. It's just a Starfrit little I don't know what you call them. It's an individual blender or a smoothie mixer. Most people buy these to make their smoothies in. It works really well. Okay, so I'm just going to set this on here and we will tear our scale. And we're going to, very first thing we want to do is we want to measure in our dry herbs. So we are going to use 1/2 ounce of the arnica flower for the size batch that we're doing. So we are going to put 1/2 ounce in here without trying to make a mess. And remember, herbs are fairly light, so 1/2 ounce may not seem like much, but it's quite a bit of herb. Okay, so we have 1/2 ounce of that. Tear the scale, and I'm going to use 1/2 ounce of the comfrey leaves. And then we're going to use 1/4 ounce or 0.25 of an ounce of the lavender flower. Go. Okay, so that is our herbs. And you can see that's a fair bit of herbs in there. And we just want to blend this dry. So you're just going to put your little top on. And because it's dry and we're not adding any liquid to this, when we turn this on, it just kind of sits there. So I actually shake this to move the dry stuff around and get this broken up. The reason that I blend it, get in contact with the oil, the more nutrients it can bring out of it. So if we leave it in larger form like this, obviously it takes a lot more effort for that oil to draw that out. So we want to break it up into smaller pieces so that we can get as much of the nutrients out of this herbal blend as we can. Okay, so I'm just going to turn this on. It's a little loud, so and you can see by blending it up and getting rid of all of that extra air space and stuff that was in there, we've broken that up fairly good. Okay, so now that we have that done, the next step is going to be putting it into a jar. For this size batch, this jar is big enough. You can just smell the lavender coming out of there. Big enough for this. Now, usually I do a lot larger batch, but I've broken this up, so I actually have 4 batches on the go of this size, okay? These are all sanitized and sterilized. I've washed them. I've sprayed them with rubbing alcohol. I'll let it evaporate. I always make sure that everything is clean, okay? I'm just going to use my spoon here to make sure that I don't lose a whole bunch of this all over the counter. But you're simply just going to put this into the jar. Okay, and now that I have that all in my jar, the first trick, okay, so obviously we blend this up into a finer powder to allow more absorption of it. And I'm just going to put it back on my scale and weigh it to 0. Now, I need something that is going to work as an astringent to start pulling things out of there. If we take something, we put it in oil, it's very hard for oil to pull stuff out. It can take months, right, of it sitting in there to pull that out. I don't know if you guys have ever made like hot pepper oil for your kitchen. I mean, the longer it sits, the better it is, right? So we want to kind of speed up that process. So I'm going to use an astringent to start pulling the properties out of these herbs prior to putting them in oil. So I'm going to use the isopropyl alcohol for this. Use the 99. You don't want to be putting water into this, okay? Water creates bacteria, so we don't want that. So you want to make sure that you're using for sure the 99%, okay? And this does evaporate and come off of our product. Another thing that you could use if you could get, and I would use if I could get, would be Everclear. That is a very high proof alcohol that you could use in this, and it would also work really well as an astringent, but I don't have access to that. So the safest and easiest thing for me to use is going to be the isopropyl alcohol, 99%. Okay, we are going to use in this, we are going to put in, okay, 1 ounce of the isopropyl alcohol into this batch. So I am going to put in the 1 ounce. So it's not a whole lot, you guys, but it's enough that it's going to moisten all of this herb and start working as that astringent, and it does evaporate off. We use it to sanitize all of our stuff, but regardless of that, that's a whole different topic. Now that we have this in here, you are going to just make sure that you get it all mixed in. I just use wooden chopstick that I have purchased from the dollar store, and I just stir it really well and make sure that all of the herb has been moistened, but we're not putting in large amounts. You don't want any liquid pooling in the bottom. You just want to moisten it so it starts to pull the nutrients out of the herbs that we have placed in this jar. Okay? You're going to put the lid on this, and you're going to leave this sit for, I always leave it sit for 24 hours. Okay, it's sealed. This isn't going to evaporate off right away, but I'm going to leave this sit for 24 hours before I move on to the next step. This is why I set everything up, okay? So now this one here, I'm just going to set this back here so I remember which one I'm working on. This one here, I will leave sit for 12 hours. This one here has been sitting for 12 hours, right? Same thing, it's just been sitting for the 12 hours. So now I can take the lid off. This is 12 hours later, you guys, and can hardly smell the alcohol on there now. It smells more like herbs, but you're going to take this, put it back on your scale. Okay, so 12 hours has gone by. I've let it sit. I've come in here and shook it a few times as I was doing other stuff, but I've just left it sit with the lid on. Tear your scale, put it back to 0. Now I am using olive oil as my carrier oil. You can use multiple different oils. For the recipe that I am making this for, I will use olive oil because it works best in that recipe. But you could use a faster absorbing oil. You could use a specific oil. If you wanted, you could use hemp seed, which is also known as a skin healing oil. So depending on what you're trying to make, that would be the oil I would go with. One of the better ones that I like to use is sometimes, it's an oil, but it goes back into solid form, would be a coconut oil. Now you can get the fractionated coconut oil. I have not done that before. That might be a video worth doing, is trying to do this with fractionated coconut oil. But coconut oil seems to hold the essence of the herbs a lot better, I find. But I will use the solid form and that kind of stuff. But it does seem to hold well. But for this recipe, I will use olive oil. All right, so we have this tared. We are going to put in 12 ounces of oil into this. and let it settle down into the herb there. We're going to stir this up in a second, but we'll just get our 12 ounces in there. There we go. And that's 12 ounces by weight, okay? Not by volume. I do all of my stuff by weight. We could break this down into grams, but it's not that specific. So if you're a little bit over, you know, the 12 ounces, it's not the end of the world or anything like that. Just stir this and mix it in really well. Okay. Once you have that done, you will now put the lid onto this. Herbs do make messes, guys. All right, so make sure you have the lid on really tight and just give it a good shake. Make sure that it's all mixed up. And you can kind of see what that's looking like. It just looks like a, I don't know, a slough bottom, so to say. Okay, so now we have that. Once I have it in here, I want to put this into a warming environment. The biggest thing is you don't want to get this too warm. So right around 100, 110 Fahrenheit would be the ideal temperature to keep this at. You know, if it goes a little bit higher, it's not the end of the world, but you do not want this high because we're not trying to deep fry our oil or our herbs in our oil. So we want to make sure that it's a very low temperature and it just has that time. So you can't really rush this. So you can just simply take this, you guys, as well, sit it on a windowsill and let the sun shine on it and wait for, you know, 3 to 4 weeks. And you can do that as well. So if you don't have the means of controlling the temperature, all of that kind of stuff, you could absolutely do this simply by just setting this on a sunny shelf in a warm location and leaving it there for 3 to 4 weeks. Absolutely capable of doing that. Okay, so you can absolutely do that. All right, so now I have that done. Now I have this one here that I have already got processed. Take it out of the water bath. I do have it in a double boiler. And I have had that in there for 12 hours and it's nice and warm, but I can put my hands on it. I just shut this off. I have this on the very lowest setting one on this, and it's such a steady heat with this thing. I actually really love this new one. I used to have the older one with the element on it, and it was a little harder to control the temperature. This works really well. You could do this in a crock pot if you could get your crock pot if you have a warming setting, but make sure that you test that warming setting, that it's not going to get extremely warm either, because it will start to cook that herb and that's not what you want. You should be able to grab that out of there and hold on to it, and it's warm, but it's not to the point where it's burning my hands. Okay, so you do not want to get it too hot. This has been in this double boiler at around 110 for 12 hours. I have been busy doing other stuff and working on other stuff, so I just come in here every once in a while. I'll pick it up, I'll give it a good shake, right? Mix all that herb around and the oils, and I plunk it back in there and move on with my day. So it's sat in there all day, okay? So minimum 12 hours. You could do it for longer if you want, but for sure the 12 hours to get what you're looking for, okay? If you heat it up and try and speed up that process, unfortunately we lose a lot of the nutrients. So this is a longer step process. It's definitely something you need to be home and around and working on. But like I say, you can just put that into your window for 3 to 4 weeks as well. So now that I have, I'm just going to clean up some of my mess here. So So now that I have this and it's been sitting in there for the full 12 hours, I want to strain this while it's warm. If we allow it to cool, that oil becomes thicker. And when the oil becomes thicker, then it strains not as well. You're not going to be able to get as much of that out. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I am going to grab one of my smaller strainers here. Let's do the small one here. So I'm just going to grab a smaller strainer. It just grabs the large particles out. I always strain my oils twice. You could do this in cheesecloth, the initial one as well, but I find because I put it through a second straining using a coffee filter, because I really want this oil to be clear so that my product has that clear appearance to it, I like to do it twice. I find if I do it straight out of here into a coffee filter or even into a cheesecloth, that it does take a longer time to get those larger chunks out and it plugs things up. So that's why I do a second strain instead of just right into the coffee filter. Okay. So now I'm going to just take this oil and I'm going to do it into here first. I'm just going to grab, before I start doing all this, because I did grab that off the shelf, I'm just going to give these a quick spray. Just to verify nothing's in there. And I'm just going to pour it through the first part of the straining just to get all the big particles. And you can see, like, it doesn't flow super fast through here because of all of the particles plugging that up. So if I got much finer than this, it takes a long time. So now that I have it all into my little sieve here, you can still see there's oil dripping. I'm going to leave this sit, okay? I'm going to allow this to sit and drip for, you know, maybe even an hour, just to get all that out without pushing and making all those fine fibers go through. Okay, so for the purpose of this, I'm actually going to take this and I'm just going to set it on a dish that I had sanitized and allow that to continue to drip while I demonstrate the second part, because I can always pour from that bowl into here. So I have my little glass dish here because I want you guys to be able to see the color as it strains. I will set this bigger one. I already had that all sanitized. I will set this bigger one on here. And I'm going to take a coffee filter and put this on top of there. That's going to grab all of the fine particles and give me a very clear oil. Okay, this is still quite cloudy. So we just want to pour it into this filter, and you'll see this goes through very slowly through this filter. But it will produce a very clear oil, which we are looking for, because I don't know if you've ever done anything with herbs, there's always a lot of sediment in the bottom. Maybe if I just move a little closer, you guys, I don't know if you can see all the sediment. Okay, so as you guys can see, this takes a very long time. It is one drip at a time. Now I just will leave this sit here and I'll go about doing the rest of my things. You could leave it sit in a safe place overnight to allow it to drip through. But this is going to take an hour to maybe even 2 hours to go through here, because all of that fine stuff is going to be collecting in the bottom of this. But gravity will work and it will pull its way through. You don't want to tear the filter, stirring and things like that. So we just leave this sit and allow it to drip through. And you can see the results is a very clean, hopefully you guys can start to see that, clean oil. So here is the jar that is complete. I have completely strained this, and actually with this one I actually just called her a day and went to bed and got up the next morning and it was all filtered through. So you gotta have patience when you're doing this kind of stuff. But you can see how nice and clear that oil is. You can see that it's obviously a lot darker than what we started with. It's definitely got a lot of the properties in it. But it's clear. There's no residue on the bottom or anything like that. It is a very clear oil with no floaties in it. And when you're going to make infused oils for your products, you don't want to have all of those floaties and things in it. So that's why I go through the whole step of allowing this to drip and go through a coffee filter. You can use a cheesecloth, but you're still going to get some of that, which would speed up the process, but you'd still have quite a bit of sediment because we did grind that pretty fine, okay? So it's as simple as that, you guys. That's how easy it is to make it. It takes time and patience, but absolutely you guys could do this. And like I say, even if you didn't want to go through the whole heating process or anything else, once you've got your oil in there to that point, you could just sit it on a nice sunny windowsill for the next 3 to 4 weeks, 5 to 6 weeks if you would like. And then, because there's no water in this, so it's not going to go rancid on you. It's not going to start building bacteria. It is oil. So, and that isopropyl alcohol isn't going to create bacteria. It's not a water product. Just make sure that you're using at least the 99%. So you're not introducing that water in there. All right. And you can absolutely do it that way as well. The biggest thing, do not overheat it. Try and speed up the process. You will destroy the herbal properties. And take the time and the patience. All right, so hopefully you guys found this video helpful and interesting. And if you'd like to see more videos on herbs and different blends that I make, different recipes I make with some of my herbal infusions, things like that, just comment in the comment box below and some of the things that you would like to see. And even if it's not something that I already make, maybe it will give me an idea to develop a formula and help you guys that way. So just make sure you're leaving a comment there. I hope that you enjoyed today's video and you guys have a wonderful day.